One of Flavio Bolsonaro's main allies in Rio de Janeiro was the former mayor of Belfort Roxo, who was also a senator. Exactly. The guy was a senator, a former mayor, and he was there as one of the main allies at his side before Flavio said he was running for president. He was one of the main ones there who was with Flavio on the Senate ticket, the three of them, right? The main candidate and the two alternates. But what happened to this main ally of Flavio Bolsonaro? Which party is he from, Andre? That's very important, from União Brasil. Notice that Republicanos are backing away, and União Brasil is also backing away now. União Brasil, which is in a federation with PP, which is the Progressive Party. What happened? This main ally of Flavio backed out and said he's going to run for state representative. He won't run for federal office anymore to support Flavio Bolsonaro because he's out. And why did this happen? This beyond the whole situation of exposure and Flavio's weakness and lack of political reach. This ally of Flavio, guess what? He was arrested. Yeah, Andre? Yeah. Here, it's Ases Gugas. He was convicted by the first panel of the Supreme Federal Court in 2018 to 4 years and 6 months in prison, initially in a semi-open prison regime. No, that's not the one, guys. It's not this one. It's this one. Look, former mayor of Belfort Roxo, Márcio Canella, from União Brasil. He's from União Brasil. The lawmaker was the target of an operation against money laundering at gas stations and was arrested after agents found a rifle in his car. União Brasil abandons the PL's campaign alliance in Rio de Janeiro and makes things harder for Flavio Bolsonaro in the southeast. The former mayor here, Marcio, was one of Flavio's main allies in Rio de Janeiro. He was one of the leaders of União Brasil there. And suddenly he backed down after the federal police operation and will no longer try to run for the Senate alongside Flavio. And he's going to try to save himself as a state representative. Try, because his situation is bad too. The police stopped him and he had a rifle inside the car. Without any kind of documentation, without anything that would make it legal for him. And besides that, he is being investigated for money laundering, corruption, other offenses, and ties to criminal organizations. So Flavio has already lost this campaign alliance in Rio de Janeiro, together with União Brasil. So the situation is gradually getting worse. The situation with Cleitinho, the one I told you about. Look, after a meeting with the president of Republicanos, Marcos Pereira, Senator Cleitinho gave up running for governor of Minas Gerais. The lawmaker was leading all the scenarios tested by the voting intention polls. So it's another loss for Flavio Bolsonaro's campaign base, Bolsonaro, from Minas Gerais, from Rio de Janeiro, and from Minas Gerais. In other words, Republicanos is pulling out. União Brasil is pulling out. Ciro Nogueira's PP is pulling out. And Podemos is also pulling out. Who's left? In fact, and in truth, only the PL itself. And soon we'll have a single party ticket for Flavio Bolsonaro. This exactly shows his political weakness, his political isolation, and the fear these parties have of putting themselves on the line. And soon, more revelations, videos, and situations will come out that entangle, that directly link Flavio Bolsonaro to Daniel Borcado's mafia. That's the reality. Besides other situations, I've always told you from the beginning that Flavio Bolsonaro would regret it. Those of you who follow me, do you remember that? I said, he's going to regret putting his name in this race. And I even explained to you why. Because the presidential race, it is different. It's not like running for the Senate or running for Congress. It's not. Because when you're running for parliament, you have to surpass yourself and get your own votes. You got your votes, you're elected. For president of the republic, no, you have a political opponent. You have political confrontation. And your whole life gets dug up. Your whole life is brought to light. Everything good you have, but also everything bad you have, comes to light. And I told you, Flavio Bolsonaro will wish he hadn't gotten into this fight. Why? Because he's got a lot to hide and he lives in a glass house. And everything will come to light. And I'll say it and you'll say it too. I'm telling you. What has been revealed so far about Flavio, about his involvement with Daniel Boccaro's mafia, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It will be released gradually. Flavio said he didn't know Daniel Boccaro. And suddenly a recording of Flavio surfaced calling him his dearest friend. Best friend, like a brother. And asking for millions, well, not really asking. There's a difference between asking and demanding. Demanding tens of millions of reais from Daniel Boccaro. Only then did we find out that they had already received more than 60 or 70 million reais. And this is just the beginning. Much remains to be revealed. And by all indications, Flavio will probably end up isolated in this whole situation because he has a lot to hide and is vulnerable. And the revelations about his possible involvement in criminal organizations have only just begun. And I repeat, he has until tomorrow to decide if he will have the support of another party. If he doesn't, he must run on a single party ticket. And someone else from the PL will be the running mate. What do I think? I think it's not enough. I think it's not enough. And who is the big loser in all of this, Andrea? Is it Flavio Bolsonaro? No. It's the right wing of Brazil. The rotten right wing that fed this, that uses it. The far right and those who support the far right are now falling victim to the far right itself. Yeah. If this whole situation exists, it's because the scummy coup plotting right wing, anti-democratic, created and fed the crocodile. And now the crocodile is going on the attack. And it doesn't want to let go at all. Thank you. The space to another. Whose problem is the far right? The left's no, it's a solution. The far right is a problem for the right. Think about it with me. Let me ask you something. I've said this before, but I'll repeat it. But it's been a long time since I said it. Who votes for Lula? They'll vote for Lula. Who used to vote for Bolsonaro? Many won't vote for Flavio Bolsonaro. And whose votes does Flavio Bolsonaro split? From Lula? No. They are competing among themselves. Lula doesn't have any opponents from the left wing. Because the left has united behind the same political project. Now the left, the right, is scattered. The right has so many candidates. Even that candidate who writes books, what's his name again, guys? Augusto Curi. He registered his candidacy. He held the Avante convention. Even he is a candidate. The right has so many candidates that they're going to split the votes, scatter the votes in every possible way. And where? The right. Many of them aren't attacking Lula. They're attacking Flavio Bolsonaro. They're attacking each other, divided among themselves. So who benefits from this? The progressive side. But more than that, what does this reveal? That the right is more lost than a blind person in a shootout. That the right wants power for its own sake. That the right got lost in the demon it created, which was the far right. And now they're fighting among themselves. And Lula is working. Lula is defending our sovereignty. Lula is trying to undo the Bolsonaro family's mess, tarifasso, so as not to harm our nation, our people. And do you think people aren't noticing this? Of course they are. Andrea, are you saying that there will be people from the right who will vote for Lula? Yes. I'm telling you that just like voting in 2022, because the progressive camp by itself would not be able to elect Lula. In 2022, Lula was elected in 2022 because there were people on the right who saw the dirty tricks of the Bolsonaro family and the right wing and said, what? I'm not voting no. I'm not voting no, no. Some people will choose to spoil their ballot. There will be people who won't even vote in this situation. But the big beneficiary of all this is the progressive camp. Because I repeat, the far right is not a problem for the left. The far right is the responsibility of the father and mother who raised it, which is the good for nothing right. That's why they're losing. And he's going to lose because Flavio can't take down Lula and Flavio is going to split the votes. So much so that, as I've said before, and I'll repeat it for you, I've been saying this from the beginning, Lula might even win in the first round. And the herd can really cry. They can cry because this shit and this mess have been caused by you for quite a while now. By the right and the far right. So you really have to cry. And I think it's not enough. And Flavio is screwed. He'll wish he never got into this fight. The meeting with Republicanos to name a running mate was another cold shower for Flavio Bolsonaro's campaign. So many of those I'm telling you about, Republicanos, Progressive Party, União Brasil, and Podemos, what are they saying? Are they saying, Andrea, that they're going to support Lula? Not directly. Many are saying they're going to stay neutral. We're going to stay neutral. But let me tell you something here, very honestly. In politics, there is no neutrality. Neutrality is already taking sides. It's a form of support. When a party like Republicanos, when a party like União Brasil, PP and Podemos says it's neutral and doesn't back anyone from its own camp, it's because they're supporting the other side. And let me explain to you why this happens. Because the election is now in October. The first round is on the first Sunday of October. And if needed, the second round is on the last Sunday of October. It's not just for president. I want you to notice this broader picture. The election is not just for the presidency. The election is for state representative. It's for federal deputy. It's for senator and for governor. And if these parties support Flavio and more videos, more audios, and more scandals come out, in other words, If they put themselves out there, share a campaign stage with Flavio, and the bombshells come out, which will very likely happen from Flavio's direct involvement with Daniel Vorcaro's mafia, they lose the election for state representative, federal deputy, senator, and governor. They run the risk of losing votes in these areas: state representative, federal deputy, senator, and governor. So it's not because they are also honest. No. Oh, Andrea. These parties then, is it because they are honest and that's why they don't want to join Flavio on the campaign stage? Because they know Flavio is dirtier than a henhouse perch? No. It's because they're afraid of losing votes for their state legislator candidate when the bombshell drops. They're afraid of losing votes for their federal deputies, especially to the federal representatives, which is where the largest share of the party fund comes from. The more federal representatives, the more party funding the party receives. Because they're afraid of losing votes for the senators they want to elect, because they're afraid of hurting the governors they want to elect. That's it. That's the big picture. They're not going to put the entire election at risk because of some criminal bum who's even officially under investigation. Are you getting the message? It's not about being champions of justice and morality. No, it's not. If anything, they're even dirtier than he is, just as bad as that guy. It's because of this situation. They don't know what might still be revealed about Flavio's involvement. And they're afraid of losing the elections in their states, especially federal deputies. The more federal deputies elected, the more money the party gets from the party fund. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. That's why Flavio got so nervous when the band journalist asked him, what else will be revealed? What else can we expect? About his involvement with Daniel Borcaro. And he got nervous and said that nothing else will come out. Even though he himself has already said that there is a video where he went to Daniel Borcaro's house, by all indications. And after some cash, that's what's happening. And tomorrow, if none of these parties declare their support for Flavio Bolsonaro, Flavio Bolsonaro will have to launch a single party ticket. He will have to find a running mate from PL. Because of all this setup I just explained to you. What do I think? What do I... Dad, I think it's not enough. But I really think it's not enough. I think it's not enough. So much so that in this context, you know what? For the right to take a beating and learn some shame, you can be right wing, you can be left wing, you can be whatever you want, but you have to be a Democrat. You can't support the coup plotter. You have to defend our sovereignty. You can't be a traitor to your country. So this right wing needs to be beaten and beaten hard. And I think the right measure at this moment for a proper beating to see if they learn something is for Lula to win in the first round. It would be a response from the people against these fascists, saboteurs of Brazil, not of Lula's government, no. They are not sabotaging Lula's government. They are sabotaging the Brazilian people. For them, the worse things get, the better, as long as they win the election. But now they're in trouble. Bolsonaro shoved his worst son down their throats as the candidate. After all, he didn't have many options. Carlos isn't quite right in the head. Eduardo has already taken off to the United States. Who's left? The most corrupt son? So I think the appropriate measure, a good lesson for the right is to lose in the first round. Lula wins in the first round for the fourth time. That would truly be a worthy and proud response from the Brazilian people, who are neither foolish nor idiots. Nor is Mario a puppet of these people, who don't care at all about Brazil. They only want power. They just want easy money. They have the nerve to be against ending the 6 days on, 1 day off work schedule, which is still there to this day. Dabinho Columbre sitting on the project with his big butt, and it's not moving forward. They had to swallow it and vote in favor of income tax exemption for workers who earn up to 5,000 reais, but they really didn't want to. They didn't want to, but had to vote yes. Oh, bye. Assis Gugas was sentenced by the first panel of the Supreme Federal Court in 2018 to 4 years and 6 months in prison. Initially in a semi-open prison regime for misappropriation of funds obtained through financing from the Bank of the Amazon. Oh, the Bolsonaro supporters are already saying the candidate is going to be Bolsonaro. Ha 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 ha. Oh my God. What do you mean, Andre? Justice Nunes Marques. He just overturned it? The ineligibility of this criminal here. Yeah, Andre, yeah. He was convicted. He's in prison at Papuda. He is a former senator. And he filed for a review of his criminal case. And Justice Nunes Marques, in an interim ruling, just him? He just overturned his ineligibility, giving him time to register his candidacy. The guy is in jail at Papuda. And Bolsonaro has already filed for a criminal review as well. And guess who the rapporteur is? Nunes Marques. Nunes Marques is the rapporteur for the criminal review that Bolsonaro filed. And the Bolsonaro supporters are already saying that the candidate will be Bolsonaro because Nunes Marques will overturn Bolsonaro's ineligibility in time for him to run. Candidato. And it's interesting, it's not the first time that Nunes Marques has benefited the former senator here who hasn't been convicted. In 2022, Nunes Marques made a decision in a criminal review benefiting this convicted person here. But the full court of the Federal Supreme Court overturned it. Then you say to me, Andrea, Nunes Marques is going to overturn Bolsonaro's ineligibility. And will Bolsonaro be able to register his candidacy? And if he registers his candidacy, the Superior Electoral Court will accept it. Because today, the president of the Superior Electoral Court is exactly Nunes Marques, and the vice president is exactly Andre Mendonça. Is Nunes Marques going to do that, Andrea? Get ready. Get ready because now it's time for the Powerful Women's Show. There are some sheep already going crazy. How long are you going to let yourself be fooled? When? You can cry. Cry. Because Nunes Marques is not going to do that. And if he does that, the full court will overturn it the next day. Also because Bolsonaro became ineligible as a result of the sentence. Because he was sentenced to 27 years and 3 months in prison. So it's a consequence of the penalty given the seriousness of the crimes he committed. So if you're watching this on the Bolsonarist channels, that Nunes Marques is going to restore Bolsonaro's eligibility and that Bolsonaro will be the candidate who's going to have a comeback, you're being fooled again. Be careful where you go. And you can cry. Bolsonaro will not be a candidate. This situation here is a totally different situation. Also, what was the reasoning of Nunes Marques? Nunes Marques said that the Supreme Court did not have jurisdiction to try and convict this former senator here because the acts he committed were not crimes committed while he was a senator. If the acts he committed were not committed while he was a senator, the Supreme Court could not judge him. The Supreme Court judged and convicted. And because of that, he overturned the ineligibility with an injunction, which I repeat, the Supreme Federal Court can overturn this decision by Nunes Marques. He didn't make this decision in the Superior Electoral Court, but in the Supreme Federal Court. It was because he believed that the Supreme Court did not have jurisdiction to convict him. In Bolsonaro's case, it has already been decided by the plenary of the Supreme Federal Court that the Supreme Federal Court had and has jurisdiction over everything involving Bolsonaro. Because the acts he committed, he did exactly while he was president of the Republic, while he was in office. Therefore, forum privilege remains with the Federal Supreme Court. So it's completely different. Do you understand, my dear? So you sheep can cry, you can keep crying because this is just another lie, another fake news to stir up all that blah, blah, blah. And so on, and soon you'll end up frustrated. As my grandmother used to say, my daughter, everyone gives what they have. And you end up frustrated because you keep waiting for something that will never come. At least in the current situation. There is nothing, no new fact that would determine a successful review of the criminal conviction before the Federal Supreme Court, which is the competent authority. Okay, that's the situation. But in any case, we have to keep an eye on it, especially on the current makeup of the Superior Electoral Court of Nunes Marques and Andre Mendonça. Mendonça. That's obvious, isn't it? We have to keep an eye on all of this because whether we like it or not, they were nominated and put where they are today by Bolsonaro. Nevertheless, I have a hard time believing or understanding that someone would risk everything they've done in their life to become who they are today just because of Bolsonaro. I don't believe that. Honestly, I don't believe it. Thank you. Obviously, they might even try. But everything depends on a decision by the panel. They don't decide anything definitively on their own. The final decision, they can rule on injunctions and precautionary measures on their own, but the final decision necessarily must go before the full court, whether in the Superior Electoral Court by all 7 justices or in the Supreme Federal Court by all 11 justices. And beyond that, the decisions of the Superior Electoral Court, they are subject to review by the Supreme Federal Court, which can even overturn a decision that was unanimously decided in the Superior Electoral Court. So I believe in justice. I'm not saying that I believe in Nunes Marques nor in Andre Mendonça. I'm saying that I believe in justice as an institution, as a collective body. They might even try, but they won't succeed. Get that into your head. They won't succeed. In fact, Nunes Marques yesterday gave a statement defending the integrity of the electronic voting system. And we have to say that Flavio Bolsonaro did attack the electronic voting machines, yes, and with lies. Saying that a company in Venezuela that manufactured the electronic voting machines is from here in Brazil. That's a lie. And Nunes Marques yesterday spoke publicly to defend the integrity and defend the security of the electronic voting machines. Nunes Marques. You're going to watch this video and then you're going to watch videos of the technicians explaining and showing the electronic voting machine and the whole situation. That's why I say, I repeat, I don't believe it, my dear and my darling, that these agents are going to put their own necks on the line because of Bolsonaro, let alone because of Flavio Bolsonaro. I don't believe it. Shall we watch the video here? This is a real slap in the face to Flavio Bolsonaro, you see? This video here from Nunes Marques is a slap in the face to Flavio Bolsonaro. So do you think Nunes Marques has become a communist now? He's already being called a communist by the Bolsonaro supporters. These people are crazy. Go get some help. Look here, my dear.
Drag. Look. The goal is to broaden society's knowledge about the different stages of the electoral process and to reaffirm, through transparency, reliable information, and citizen participation, the robustness, auditability, and ongoing technological evolution of the system that is a cornerstone of Brazilian democracy. I invite all of society to take part in this initiative. The doors of the electoral justice system remain open to anyone who wishes to learn about, follow, and oversee the electoral process. Transparency is not just a commitment of this institution, it is one of the pillars on which society's trust in Brazilian elections is built. And by regional electoral courts nationwide. Throughout this week, there will be public demonstrations of the electronic voting machine, educational activities, guided tours, and initiatives aimed at informing the public about how the electronic voting system works. The goal is to broaden society's understanding of the various stages of the electoral process.
Then you might say, Andrea, is there anything new about this? Not at all. This is done in every election, which is what Nunes Marques is saying. The doors of the electoral court are open. For anyone who wants to see the electronic voting machine, for anyone who wants information, there will be technicians there, you ask, and the technicians will explain it to you. There are a series of audits carried out by various institutions, the Brazilian Bar Association, the Public Prosecutor's Office, various institutions, political parties. All political parties are invited to participate in a series of audit procedures for the electronic voting machines. Always before the election. Alexandre de Moraes did this, Nunes Marques did this, and everyone did. They even released videos from the technicians explaining some situations regarding the electronic voting machines here, which I think is important. We should highlight this here. Look here.
Everything we've shown so far was created in Brazil. The voting machine is made here and is a project of the Superior Electoral Court,
Yes.
right?
That's important because the security architecture and the entire equipment architecture are made by Superior Electoral Court staff. So we put this production out to bid, yes. The company has to go through more than 150 tests during the bidding process, and after being contracted, it still continues developing the project with technicians from the Superior Electoral Court. From the hardware side, the software side, the cryptographic signature side, so that the project turns out exactly as Brazil needs. Other countries buy a ready-made voting machine off the shelf. It's a ready-made model, which will have flaws and advantages and disadvantages, and they have to accept that. But the Brazilian electronic voting machine, besides having all that, is also part of a large electronic voting system. There are many systems before the electronic voting machine and many systems after it. So it's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Let's put it that way. It's the main character. But there are many systems that prepare the electronic voting machine. The electronic voting machine handles the candidates, the voters, etc., all with digital signatures and then the tallying.
All of this is what
And all of this here proves Flavio the liar wrong, who said that the voting machines were made by a company from Venezuela. Look at that. That's crazy. This Flavio lies through his teeth, doesn't he, folks? Questioning the electronic voting machines that got him elected to the Senate. Questioning the electronic voting machines that kept him as a state representative for 16 years in Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, because here's the thing. When they win, everything is fine. The electronic voting machine is wonderful. They go to the certification ceremony, shake hands with the TSC judges, say thank you very much. Everything is great. But when they lose, then they come up with all this nonsense. See? Saying there's fraud, that something's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Man, the worst thing is when someone doesn't know how to lose. Because let me tell you something. In a democracy, it's normal to lose. Andrea, it's normal. It's normal. In life, it's normal. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, right? That's true. And in a democracy, it's like that too. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, then you lose again, lose, until one day you win, and that's all right. Now, Bolsonaro supporters only want to win, and if they don't win, they act like sulky, stubborn kids and start attacking the electronic voting machines. Now, if they win, everything is just fine. Everything is wonderful. For example, in 2022, the largest group of elected federal deputies was from the PL. I will never forget, 99 federal deputies from the PL were elected, the largest group. Maybe even in the history of Brazil. Who elected them, Andrea? The electronic voting machines in 2022. The second largest group of senators elected were from the PL. Through the electronic voting machines. Then, in that regard, they stayed very quiet. Congratulations, they went to the certification ceremony in December. They went there to take office January 1st. Everything was beautiful, wonderful. Congratulations, Alexandre de Moraes, because Alexandre de Moraes was the president of the TSC at the time. Then, when Bolsonaro loses, that's it. Then there was fraud. My dear, who would be dumb enough to commit fraud just for the president? Who would be dumb? Dumb? Because you have to be really dumb to commit fraud just for the president. If you're going to commit fraud, it has to be for the president and his base. Right? Do you understand? So these people, they're chaotic, they're cynical, and that's how democracy is. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and that's okay. That's how it works. Stop and think with me. If Bolsonaro had accepted his defeat in 2022, there wouldn't have been a coup attempt. He could be a candidate again now. Could he, Andre? He could. That's how democracy works. If he had said, no, guys, look, go home, I lost, I'm going to hand over the sash to the winner. That's how democracy works. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and that's okay. I've lost elections, I've won elections, it's all fine. Go home, it's all right. In 4 years, we'll be back again. If Bolsonaro had taken a democratic stance, he could be running today trying to defeat Lula. Could he, Andre? Yes, he could. Easily. But actually, no. He didn't accept it when he lost. And he was already influencing people just like Flavio is trying to do. Putting it in people's minds that if he loses, there's fraud, that if he loses, there's a problem with the voting machines, that the machines were made in Venezuela. Flavio said that. So, Flavio is doing the same thing that Bolsonaro did. But there's a difference now. The institutions are better prepared to deal with this kind of coup plotter. And let me tell you something. Flavio will get absolutely crushed by Lula. If he keeps this up, he'll give Lula a first-round win. And when that happens, he'll lose his parliamentary immunity. Flavio Bolsonaro, he won't be anything anymore. He won't be a senator or anything else anymore. Flavio Bolsonaro, without parliamentary immunity, is going to jail. He won't last 2 months out of jail. Listen to what I'm telling you. Then do you know what he's going to do? He'll take the blame. He's going to hide where his brother is hiding there. Where Eduardo Bolsonaro is, where Alexandre Romagem is, where Alain dos Santos is. Obviously, then he'll come up with that story, right? To sweet talk the crowd that cries and gets fooled. Oh, I'm going because I'm going to defend Brazil. I'm going because I'm going to defend Brazil from the communist dictatorship, from Alexandre de Moraes, from the federal police, from the people, from the electronic voting machines, and from everything else. Then he's going to flee to the United States. But you tell, I tell. How much longer will they have Donald Trump's protection? Donald Trump can't run for re-election anymore. The only thing left for Donald Trump is a coup. Because he can't participate anymore. And you tell, I tell, do you know what's going to happen in the United States elections? The United States in the next one now in 2 years? The people are going to reject Donald Trump. Donald Trump has one of the worst disapproval ratings in United States history. His disapproval has already gone over 66. Do you know what people are going to do as a protest and out of anger? They're going to vote for the Democrats, and they're going to elect a Democrat as president of the United States. What is Eduardo Bolsonaro going to do with his life? What is Flavio going to do with his life when a Democrat takes over there? Where is he going to run to? Where is he going to escape to? I'm telling you all this because they understand what I mean. That's why there's this movement among the Bolsonaro supporters, and their hope is that Donald Trump will remove Lula from the election, just like Sergio Moro did in 2018 so Bolsonaro could win. Their hope and what they're talking about in their circles is the possibility of Donald Trump arresting Lula, just like he did with Maduro, because then Lula would be removed from the election and Flavio would win. That's the only way he could win. But if that happens, Brazil will descend into civil war. The people won't accept that. Our problems, our land, our sovereignty, we solve them. And beyond that, my dear, worldwide, the world will tremble because they won't accept that, especially China and Russia. That's why I don't believe that theory. Is it a theory, Andre? Yes. Are people saying it? They are. But I don't believe in that. Now, obviously, the fact that I don't believe doesn't mean that preventive security measures shouldn't be taken, especially for Lula, because we're talking about crazy people. Actually, Vandana, several crazy people, right, Flavio? Right, Eduardo, and right, Carlos? Hey, NetTramp. We're talking about a bunch of crazy people. And Trump is more. So all the measures have to be taken. Because we can't underestimate fascists. The far right is extremely dangerous, not only in Brazil, but also in the US and worldwide. And preventive and precautionary measures should be adopted. Don't underestimate hate of these people. That's why I say it and I'll repeat it. Don't underestimate hate. Lula is a 4-time winner and they know that. That's why they're desperate. And Flavio Bolsonaro is alone, abandoned, isolated. And he only has until tomorrow. His time is running out. Hit the like button, like, comment, and share. Kisses. Thank you so much.